Hello viewers, this is Wolf here. Welcome to Wolf's Haven and to another Monster Hunter figure review. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Capcom figure builder creator's model, Violet Mizutsune. Now, it was great that Mizutsune showed up in Monster Hunter Rise, but even better that it got a new subspecies, the Violet Mizutsune. And Violet Mizutsune is every bit as cool as the original, which is pretty much what got me hyped to pick up a model within this line here and see what this thing looks like. So, without any further ado, I'm gonna unbox this and then, yes, take a look at this and see what we have here. Alright, so with Violet Mizutsune out of the box, this thing is looking absolutely beautiful here. Now, I don't actually own the original Mizutsune creator's model statue, but from what I understand, I think that this is actually supposed to be the exact same pose, the exact same layout as that one, just a different color swap. So for those who actually own the original Mizutsune, there's not really going to be too much different here besides just the color difference. But yeah, I do want to talk about some of the color details here since this is actually my first Mizutsune within this line. So some of the things in particular that I wanted to look at, which definitely do catch my eye, is of course the color palette that we have here. Of course, in-game, Violet Mizutsune looks great, but here in statue form, it just looks absolutely beautiful. Like this thing, the level of detail that we have here on the various scales, especially on these almost white, like very bright silver scales that we have here, look really cool. The one thing that I really like about it is that I'm not sure if you can really make it out in the camera here, but the scales and some other parts of the body, like the claws, have almost like a glossy finish to them, and that kind of gives the effect that Violet Mizutsune might have some oil on its body, which I think that's kind of a cool detail. You can kind of see a bit of like shimmering spots on the scales as well, on the silver scales, and a little bit of almost like a liquid effect, like an oily liquid effect on the black fur here on the tail, which I think is really cool. I do appreciate that bit of detail here. But of course, I do really like the color palette. The purples mixing with these bright silvers is really beautiful looking, and then we also have the blacks to add that third color, which stands out from the rest of it and definitely does look very distinct here. I do like the patterning that we have on these little fins here. You can kind of see that there's these darker, like almost black, but they're kind of like a dark purple inside these little purple fins here, or it's more of like an indigo bit of a color transition going from a bit of a silver, you can kind of see here, or a gray, going out into this indigo color here, which is very beautiful here. If we take a look at Violet Mizutsune's head, quite a lot of detail here. Of course, we have much more of that patterning here on these fins all around the head. You can kind of see, like, this is kind of a cool detail where you have these two patterns that kind of come together once the two fins meet each other. So that's kind of cool. We have like these two circles here, which is really nice. Of course, more of these fins here. More color variation where we have a bit of like a teal color, which goes out to more of these purples and like indigo colors at the very end of it as well. There's not a whole lot of detail in Violet Mizutsune's eye. You actually can't even really see the eye all that much, so there's not really a whole lot there, unfortunately. But the detail in the mouth is looking pretty decent. Like, I do like that color that we have in there. It's kind of like a turquoise color around the mouth, and then the tongue looking very distinct from everything else, and then, of course, the fangs with its own little, almost kind of like a beigey color in there as well. So overall, the face is looking really good. I love the patterning all around the body, which looks very good. Of course, when you look to the back of the head, we have more of these fins. Doesn't have the patterning, but of course we have more of those beautiful color transitions from that bright silver into the indigo colors at the back. And then, yeah, those fins are just kind of white at the back there. So we take a look to Violet Mizutsune's main body here. Of course, we have a bit of this fur that kind of comes out to a bit of a turquoise color just at the very tips of the fur here on the legs. And you can kind of see a bit of that glossy finish that I was mentioning earlier, which kind of goes all the way down the whole leg here. So it definitely looks as if Mizutsune is wet here, right? Like it's covered in oil, which is really cool. We have these very long claws here, which does have some different color variation from everything else, where, you know, most of the claws are kind of just black. We have this, which kind of goes out into that turquoise color as well, and the claws looking like a big hook as well here. So definitely a cool looking design for sure, and the detail here looks really good. We have more of these turquoise colors as we look to the fur on the underside of Mizutsune's body. Um, and then if we take a look to the tail, of course, the thing that I like most about the tail, like I mentioned before, is how we have like this abundance of black fur lining the tail and kind of coming out through the top here at the very end, looking very good, And of course, yeah, again, we have that oily texture or oily visual on the tail fur here. And then of course we have some of the bubble effects. So we have like these oily bubbles that are kind of just sitting on the fins around the tail. So that's a nice looking effect there. Definitely adds a lot to the character of here, the character of Violet Mizutsune here. And some of these pieces seem as if they might be a little bit fragile. You can kind of see that this piece here is kind of movable. Don't really want to play around with that too much because it seems like it could possibly break. But yeah, it does seem like there are some fragile pieces on Mizutsune's body here. But yeah, if you take a look to the base, of course the base is gonna look like as if there's a bunch of bubbles here. We have a bunch of bubbles down here, and then we're kind of on like a wet surface right around here as it comes to the rock base that Mizutsune is propped up on here. So definitely a good variety of colors all around the whole statue. Everything stands out quite a bit from each other because like all these colors are just very distinct and very vibrant from each other, which looks very good, of course. You can take a look to the bottom of Mizutsune's tail there. You can kind of see it has this kind of rugged look at the very bottom of it with all of that fur. And there's a bubble hidden right here and another one directly underneath the tail. But yeah, overall, this looks really good. There are some aspects of it that don't have as much detail as I would have liked, but overall, it's a very beautiful looking statue. So here's a size comparison with Violet Mizutsune here. As you can see, Violet Mizutsune is a little bit on the smaller side, definitely more comparable to the older Creators Model statues, much like my Velkhana right here. But yeah, this Violet Mizutsune is not going to be taking up a whole lot of space. You can just see as it's compared to the can here, it doesn't quite reach up to the top of it, like it's just about there. But for a more precise reading here, Violet Mizutsune is about 6.5 inches tall and about 6.5 inches wide as well. So it's not the biggest thing in the world, but I feel that the size is just about right to where you're going to get like a decent level of detail throughout the body at this scale, but at the same time you're not going to be scrambling for space in a display area. This is going to fit almost anywhere. It's pretty small and it's going to look good as it is. So that's pretty much going to cover everything that I wanted to highlight in regards to Violet Mizutsune. If I were to go into my final thoughts real quick, this is a very stunning statue. Like I mentioned before, I love all of the colors on this thing, from the grays, the silvers, the indigos, the blacks, and even the darker blues. Everything comes together and coalesces into a very beautiful package here. Even the smaller details around the base and even the bubbles even have a bit of a transparent effect to them, and you can kind of see bits and pieces of Mizutsune's body if you really look for them through the bubbles, which I think is a pretty cool detail. Like, everything here just looks really nice, and it's very well designed. The other thing that I really appreciate about this as well is the scale, and that's largely due to the fact that there have been quite a few larger scale Monster Hunter statues that have come out recently, and this is definitely a breath of fresh air to have a statue on a little bit of a smaller scale, because like I mentioned before in the size comparison, you're not really going to have to worry about space with this thing. This Mizutsune does not command very much space at all. You can pretty much put it anywhere you want, and it's going to fit, and it's going to look good. The only downside to this scale is that there is, of course, going to be a little bit of detail and quality loss in some of the smaller areas. Like, I did notice, like, some areas around the face could have looked a little bit better if this was a larger statue, but at the end of the day, I feel like those are just very small nitpicks. I do think that overall the statue does look very good, because when you look at the the majority of the body, the scales around Mizutsune's main body, the patterns around the fins, the fur around the tail, all the bubbles and all that stuff, all of that looks very nice, and it definitely overshadows any small flaws that the statue might have visually. When it comes to anyone that has the original Mizutsune and is on the fence about picking up Violet Mizutsune, I can't really say one way or the other. That's really just gonna come to personal preference. If you really like Violet Mizutsune as a monster and you want to pick it up, I think it's definitely worth a purchase, because again, this is a really good looking statue. I don't think that you'll be disappointed. Violet Mizutsune is captured very well here. But yeah, if it's a case where you kind of prefer the original Mizutsune, I'd say just stay with that. Because the regular Mizutsune, it does look very colorful. In some cases, it might be a little bit more colorful than this Violet Mizutsune here. But, both statues have their own merits, but they're also very similar to each other too. Since they both have the exact same pose, the only real difference is that it's just a color swap. But yeah, I think if you do like Violet Mizutsune, this is a solid buy. But yeah, that's basically going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys found it informative. If you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment. But yeah, there's definitely going to be more Monster Hunter videos coming in the future, so I hope you stay tuned for all of that. But until then, I hope you guys have a good day or good night, depending on where you are, and I will see you all later.